and welcome to Creative Conversations with David and Donna. I'm Donna.
And I'm David.
And today we'd like to tell you about something we mentioned last week, which is that my theater group did a haunted house, and it was lots of fun. So David got to go through, so since I'm kind of jaded since I put it together, I'll let him tell you what he thought.
I was very excited. I was able to be a part of the first haunted house, and I remember when we were discussing what to do in the first year of theater, and the idea of a haunted house was brought up and then chosen as this is what we're going to do, I actually had a concern. I brought it up. I said, what's theatrical about it? And actually your response was, well, it's a fundraiser. Which it succeeded. It did that very much so and gave us exactly what we needed to put on two amazing plays. But what I quickly learned was, well, there is a lot of theatrics in it if you do it right, because you can... I actually had the privilege, the joy of being a host in it, which was I would just lead people through the haunted house. But by doing that, I kind of got to create my own character and had a lot of fun with it. But anyway, it was a great success the first year we do it. The second year, I was a part of it again, even though I graduated. We needed some extra people, so I played a doctor. And that was fun, too. And I learned the theatrical. I'm a doctor, but I was like, what if I'm a German doctor?
And you were torturing people.
And I was torturing people as a German doctor. And I was like, my prognosis, you're dead. Like, what if I get to do that?
Did you do that?
Yes, I did. I did. And then like a couple times people would come through and I'd be like, welcome to my office. Like I would talk like that, just try different things. And that's what's cool about the haunted house for actors is every time a new group comes through, you can try something different with whatever you're doing. It is playing a character. It's a role that you're doing in the house to scare people. And anyway, this year I was not a part of it. I just really wanted to go through it and experience it fully. I had no idea anything about it. I knew that the theme was Stranger Things, which I'm a huge fan of that show. I know you are too, Donna.
I am.
I love it. Season 3 of Stranger Things is like my favorite thing in the world. I binge watched it in a day. Anyway, I was really excited to go through it, and the first thing that came to my mind after coming out of it was how entertaining it was. How even if there weren't a bunch of extremely scary jump scares, it was still very scary and very well done and very just entertaining. I loved going through it. The best part, by far, that sounds so like everything else sucked. No, everything was great, but the best part that I really loved were every single actor in the haunted house like was really into it, and there was this real energy that like it's what's the word? It's
not contagious.
Contagious. Yeah, that is the word. Yeah, it's contagious. This word of you go through, and if even if it's you could have like nothing. It could be the crappiest made haunted house of all time, but if you have the energy there of these people that are a part of it, it can rub off on the I guess the audience is what you would call it, and make it effective. And the energy was fully there. And also just very impressive job from all of the tech behind Denham Springs Theater. It looks so professionally done, and I think that was sort of like that's always been a joke about not just the haunted house, everything we do, especially the first year. Everything theater was like, oh, okay, it's the high school theater. What are they going to do? Cinderella? That's so cute.
Yeah.
You know, then they go through the haunted house. I remember especially the first year, kept hearing people be like, that was terrifying. I'm like, I know.
It's the real deal. It's legit.
Yeah, and I still think our first year was the most terrifying because like we had that room with like the movie. That was scary. Yeah. And it's a lot more jump scares, but people would come through like, that was... oh my God. They have like an exit door. People always come blasting out of it, like running and screaming. And it takes about like a minute and a half to go through. And every minute and a half, they get to the end, which is the big scary part. And you hear screams erupt.
It's like being in line for a roller coaster.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a roller coaster. It's we do it in the Denham Springs cafeteria. And every year now, this is the third year that we've done it. The tech people go in there a couple nights before, and with help from the actors also. They don't just sit around. And this time y'all just transform it into this unrecognizable thing. You have no idea that a cafeteria was ever in there. It's really, really impressive how well done it is and how you get that done in a day. In about a day.
takes a lot of hands. And so that's a lesson I've had to learn, because as a theater teacher, I've spent many a day after a show with me and one other person or 2 or 3 other people. It all has to come down and get put up. So luckily we had a lot of help this year. But I wanted to talk to David and to you. Of course, I'm talking to David in our creative conversation. But he had asked me before, or mentioned before, the energy. So one of the things we were able to do in class is actually watch videos on YouTube from haunt actors. And we have the 13th Gate here in our area. So they had videos we watched, and we actually practiced, which we had never done before. We talked about it, but we actually got up in front of the class and said, okay, if I'm going to be a creepy child, what are things I can do to be a creepy child? You know, if I'm going to be a man with a dead wife, what things can we do? And if I'm going to be a zombie, if I'm going to be a whatever, you know, and we just got up there and did it and tried it. And that is awkward. And I tell my students, probably the hardest place to act is in front of a classroom, because your audience is 2 feet away from you and staring right in your face. And half the time it's people that you really know or that you're kind of shy in front of. Not at all like being on stage or being in a haunted house where people are just passing by one after the other. So it was a bit kind of off-putting to some of the actors, but it's like, let's just try. Let's just see what we can do. And I think because we just constantly encouraged push further. Mm-hmm. What else can you do? Make it bigger. And I kept telling them, even if you feel awkward, when a group comes through and you do something that makes somebody scream, it just like gets in your soul. It's like you want to make some more people scream, and it starts bringing the inner beast out. And I've seen quite a few people become unhinged, unleashed in the haunted house, and like, when can I act again? Like, it makes them realize how wonderful it really is.
Actually, it was surprising how great the haunted house is as a first endeavor for people, because now the way your classes are set up is you have Theater 2 classes, which are full of students who have already been a part of it, but then you also have Theater 1 classes, which are now only students who have never been a part of your theater before. Right. And this is a great way to open them up into that world. And I mean, I got that same feeling when I did it. And something I noticed about what you're saying, people opening up, is at least this is how I felt whenever I was the doctor. Because the first year I was a host, I didn't really have to scare anybody as the host.
But you still developed your character.
I still developed the character.
Scary Skelly.
Scary Skelly. Yeah, exactly. But as the doctor, there was pressure on me to be scary. I didn't realize that was really going to be a thing, and I think that's maybe why people have to get like broken out and like and explode from it, because you kind of are afraid to give it your all, because what if you give it your all and nobody's scared? Right. But you have to get past that, and the way you get past that is with what you were doing in your class, with the encouragement and people going up there and rehearsing and doing these creepy things, and the rest of the actors responding to it in a positive, or I guess technically negative because they're scared, way.
Depends on how you look at that.
Depends on how you look at it. And like you said, the more you scare people, the more it comes out. The same way that whenever you're on stage and you tell a joke and they laugh, it's like, oh, they thought it was funny. Let's be even funnier. Let's make them laugh again. You just want more and more and more. It's like a drug.
It is.
When entertaining people is like a drug, but a healthy one that doesn't, kill you. So, well...
It's an adrenaline rush. Let us leave it at that. It is definitely an adrenaline rush, no doubt.
Y'all did a great job, as always. And I was talking with current students of yours, about how it all relates back to what I've always been saying since we started this, was turning the world into Donna's classroom, where you create this environment where people can do this sort of thing. And where you were telling me before we started the podcast that in class, actually the day before, y'all just did like a compliments thing where everybody just wrote down 5 compliments for people in the room, and you read them all out loud, and it just raised the energy to 11, and that caused this environment where people now, like, they're hyped and they go into the next day where it's the haunted house and they just want to all act with each other, and it's like hanging out with your friends, because a lot of them are in scenes together, and I've gone through before and been a part of it. When a group goes past, you all huddle up and you're like, that was amazing, okay, what can we do this time? It's like, that was a great job, can you do this? And they play off each other. And I saw that because I went through the haunted house this year a couple of times, and every time I went through, they were doing something just a little bit different, just trying new things, and they were messing with each other, and what might have been at first like they're on their thing, now I see people like on top of each other pretending to eat each other, and the other one's screaming, and and someone bursted through a cage and like tackled one of them, and the nuns are next to each other this time, and the nurses are a nurse is trying to restrain one of the patients, and they start meshing well with each other and creating a scene. And whenever the actors are interacting with each other, the scene becomes more alive. Same thing on stage. It's like an interactive play, a haunted house.
Yes, it is. And you just constantly have a redo every 5 seconds.
Yeah, and you get that's a great exercise for actors.
Is.
Imagine if you got to do a scene, especially a scene you're not confident with. Let's say you're on a play and there's a scene you're not very confident with. What better way to become more confident than just to get to do it over and over and over again with these people who they're going to see it, and then a new one comes through and a new one, and you get to find which one reacts the best. And it's like an experiment, you know, you just...
Well, it is what rehearsal process is. The difference is you have an audience, like you just said.
Yeah.
So when we talk about rehearsing for the play, you have to kind of go in slowly. Everybody's got to get their lines learned, start the blocking and all, and then you get to where you've learned your lines, and then you do it. And then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And so I tell my actors, when you get to the point where you're about ready to throw up because you're so sick of doing it again, then you're ready to be in front of an audience. But you have to find a way to get your energy back because you've said it so many times. You've worked on your timing, and unfortunately, there's not always an audience to give you that feedback except for your director. And I mean, I can't laugh every single time.
I know.
I do try to keep the energy, but
well, that's a problem that I've always said. I'm sure I've said it before, where you rehearse for 3 weeks and nobody's laughing at the jokes anymore because they overheard them, and you start to convince yourself that it's not funny. But then the first night of the play, someone says a joke and the audience erupts and then it just wakes everybody back up.
Yeah, the energy of the audience is what pulls you through.
Definitely, and if the audience is dead, it's
hard.
It's really hard to get through it.
And we've had a few of those.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's the same way in the haunted house where people go through, they're just not reacting at all.
I actually had a few of my students tell me, I went through and I was probably a bad audience member because I didn't scream, but I mean, I was scared on the inside. And so different people react differently.
I've always had a problem, I've been told, with like reacting. Like when I met Stan Lee, which by the way, I don't know if I told the story, I met Stan Lee, greatest day of my life. I walked away and my dad was there and he was like, "Are you good? I mean, like, you just met Stan Lee and you're just kind of a blank face." I'm like, "Oh, you don't understand. My heart's beating like 3 times as fast as what it should be right now. This is amazing." But I just wasn't expressing it. But being part of theater, I think that's opened me up to being very expressive. If I would have met Stan Lee now, I'd been jumping and doing cartwheels and stuff. And
jumped up on him and broken his back or something.
Mr. Lee. Oh. We could do a whole episode just about Stan Lee.
I bet we could.
But anyway, great job. And
thank you.
I loved the setting.
Yeah, I was going to say, we were going to talk about setting
nice
today.
Transition there. I love the setting that y'all created for this whole. I mean, every single room is like, this is an insane asylum now. And it's just throwing up some stuff on the walls and doing a little magic.
Yep.
And it creates this beautiful setting that, well, beautiful is a relative word.
An effective setting.
An
for the
effective,
haunted house.
that's a good word.
Well, the thing that's good about doing a haunted house, it's not quite tying into setting exactly, is that every year you accumulate things, and if you keep them organized, and then you can pull them out and use them again next year. So they were setting up after school Thursday because the show ran Friday and Saturday. And it's like, let's just go pull down everything we've ever used from the haunted house before. And we brought stuff out of the prop room, and we just started pulling stuff out of bins, and we just found places to put all the props. That's why the rooms were so much more full. So you can create something like y'all did with a very minimal set, because we just didn't have anything to work with at that time. There were some props, but it was mostly just some canvas walls. But we got it across with minimal, like blood and guts and stuff. But then every year we just kind of are adding more. And this year the tech classes created some pieces. They made pretty big, like they had a fireplace and the pews and the pulpit and nice big things that filled the space and made it look more like the area. So again, now we have all these things, and we would, space is always an issue. Anybody who's a theater person knows that we can't keep it all, but we'll store what we can to use again. But
you never want to get rid of anything. It's so hard. I've been with you cleaning out the prop room, and I'm like, Donna,
do we really need this?
This jacket is like covered in roaches. We need to throw it away, you know.
And I'm like,
you know
but
what I
it could
mean?
be for a zombie.
But it could be for a zombie. I'm like, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's never been covered in roaches.
Yeah, that's a bit of a relative term.
Yeah, but it's like gross.
Yeah, he doesn't understand why I won't throw stuff away. But I will. You'll be proud of me. I pulled quite a bit of the costume, the junk that we have, and said, "Here, make zombies out of it." Because we had it hanging in there and we never used it.
But I also totally get it, because every time we've done a play, you've gone in there and been like, well, I used this 10 years ago, and I'm like, oh, okay, so good thing you kept it then,
Right.
so we don't have to do this again. So I guess you're right.
Yeah.
So when you got to keep things for a setting, and
You can reuse things.
you can reuse things.
For sure.
And create a setting. When you're making a set for a play, it's very important to get creative with what you're doing and go through, see what you have. I mean, I've made a bunch of short films, and I've rarely ever purchased something for them.
Yeah.
I've just sort of like gone through my closet of stuff and been like, you know,
Borrow something from people.
or I go through what I have, and I'm like, well, I really wanted like a full trench coat, but this
It's close
half
enough.
trench coat
Yeah.
is close enough, so I don't have to go buy a $100 trench coat, and you make it work. And I'm like, man, I really wanted like this prop gun, but I'll just take this old Nerf gun and I'll spray paint it black, and then it'll work just as well. And
Yeah.
you use what you have to create the set and the world to pull you into. I was talking a couple episodes ago about maybe it was our Star Trek episode, or maybe it was our favorite characters episode. I don't remember which one, but about sets and movies being like real, like doing real places and having
because you
real
were
stuff.
It was the Star Trek episode. You were disgusted at all of the digital CGI.
Yeah, and it's really great whenever you can take these real physical things and make a set. I guess set and setting are kind of different things, but my mind's on set right now for some reason.
No, because of our transition to the haunted house.
Because I love the haunted house. All these things are like real things you can hold in your hand, and it makes it more scary to be like, holy crap, that's right there. And same thing when you're watching a play, you see these things, and it's just this real physical thing that you see up on stage. You could grab that sword and you could swing that sword around, and the actors are all interacting with each other. It makes it all more real. It makes the setting, it pulls you into the setting. Having a good set pulls you into the setting.
I agree with that. Yes. So let's talk about setting, because that was kind of supposed to be our topic for the day.
Yeah.
So talk to me about a movie that you really feel like the setting was important.
Well, fresh on my mind, this first comes to my head because I just saw it, was the new Joker movie starring Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Todd Phillips. It's fresh in theaters right now. I don't think you've seen it, have you?
I've heard a whole
You've heard
lot
a
of people
whole lot
talk
about it, so you're aware of what it is.
In general, you can tell me again.
So about Batman's villain, the Joker,
like
arch
how he
nemesis.
became.
This is an origin story for the
Okay.
Joker. Yeah, it's not necessarily tied in with any existing universe. It's not like oh, this is the Christopher Nolan Joker's origin. It's not really that. It's just its own thing in its own universe. Bruce Wayne is in it, but as a child, and that's not a spoiler. It's in the
Trailer.
In the trailer. If I'm gonna spoil something, I'll give a warning. But that movie did something really great. You know all about Gotham City, right? Mm-hmm. It really made Gotham City a character.
Oh wow!
In the film of itself. A lot of what happens in the film is based around what Gotham is. It's this place where it's trashy, it's disgusting. I would never want. I'm watching. I never want to go there ever. It's this disgusting area, and people are living in filth, and that's what drives the plot. Actually, of you have these rich business people who are like living these in their high towers away from all the gunk, and they've kind of forgotten about the people living in garbage, and it really drives the point forward whenever you see, oh, these streets are disgusting. These living conditions are gross. This is the only apartment they can afford, and they talk about that in the film. Like, yeah, this elevator broke, right? Yeah, well, it's the only place I can afford with the living conditions that we're kind of been put into, and because I'm on disability and my welfare got cut because of blah 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 of the city needed this instead, and it's a real character in itself of the film, and
it sounds
it's
like
an
they're
important
trying
part.
to make some points about our society.
They definitely, without a doubt, Joker is Joker. Just in general, that this movie is all about it's a deconstruction, and they're making a lot of points about our society right now and about the way we treat mentally ill people. That's the big one, and the way that the rich and the poor and
the privileged.
The privileged, yeah, and what could happen and I loved it. I could talk about that. Like I love the film.
Wow, a lot of people don't.
A lot of people. There's a lot of controversy around it.
I've heard about people walking out of the theater and stuff.
I haven't heard about that. Wow. From my understanding, the overall consensus is positive of like the reviews itself, but I've definitely heard like the average person. I've heard a lot about like the average Facebook mom walking out of the film. She's like,
not watching that. So was it because the setting was so harsh?
That, and also the violence is very unforgiving.
Okay. It's
not even extremely gory. It's just the way that it's presented.
Yeah.
It's very like, it's very intense. It's also, I would say, it says a lot. It's very daring. And it says a lot. There's a lot to say, and it's going to say it whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. And I guess that probably turns a lot of people off to it. And I totally understand why. I don't even 100% agree with everything the film is saying, but I appreciate that it's saying something.
Right.
It caused a lot of controversy, definitely. And, also, the main character, this guy you're supposed to root for, he's a bad guy. So that can cause problems, I'm sure. If it's like, I'm sure people can misinterpret it as Todd Phillips thinks that we should murder people, I'm sure people would take it as that, which I don't think that's what he's trying to say at all. In fact, I think that a big part of what he's trying to say with the film in this setting of Gotham City where these people are depicted this way is, yes, even if you are the person who is in poverty and low down and mentally ill and you're the person who's being kicked in the face, you shouldn't go murder people.
Right.
Even though you are right to feel the way you feel, this is too far. Don't shoot people because this causes even more problems. He's saying a lot about everybody. It's a criticize on everybody, and I really enjoyed it. I totally get where the controversy is coming from, though. Mm-hmm. I can see people not being ready for this movie. And that sounds so dramatic to say, but like, I don't remember the last time there was like a movie. Like, have you ever seen Taxi Driver?
No.
Oh, okay. It's a Scorsese movie. It's just about this guy who it's the sort of the same plot. It's like this guy who's like I think he's a Vietnam vet, and he sort of like has no place for him in society, so he kind of just goes crazy. There's no place for him.
I gotcha.
And so he just kind of goes crazy and becomes like this vigilante and like starts killing people because like the world just he goes mad and the world goes mad and that came out like in the 80s, maybe sooner. Mm-hmm. I don't remember
Not
exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's been a long time since something like this, and I can see people being really turned off to that. Also, but it's very popular. I mean, it broke records. It's the highest box opening weekend in October ever. Mm-hmm. Beat Venom, which came out last year. Breaking all sorts of records. Right now, it's in the top 10 of IMDb's greatest movies of all time, which I think is taking it a little too far.
Maybe.
It came out a week ago.
Yeah.
Digested a little bit, but I still really enjoyed the movie. Joaquin Phoenix did an amazing job. Great actor, Oscar-winning actor. And this Joker is nothing like the Joker you may know. He's not Batman's arch nemesis, the Joker. It's a very different character. I could see him becoming that, but it's not that. It's his origin. It's his origin, yes. And also, I could even see this being like, it takes place in Gotham. They very clearly establish it in Gotham with Bruce Wayne and Thomas Wayne. Bruce Wayne's father is like the main antagonist of the movie. It's in Gotham because, like I was saying, the setting is a character in itself. Gotham's a very important place, and they do that a lot in Batman movies. In The Dark Knight, have you seen The Dark Knight by chance?
I might have, but it's so long ago.
It's okay. In The Dark Knight, also a movie where starring the Joker, the Gotham becomes a character because Gotham defeats Joker. Just the idea there is Joker's, long story short, he sets up a bomb in one place and a bomb in the other. And one of the bombs, if it blows up, it'll kill prisoners, and one of the bombs blows up, it'll kill innocent people. And they each have a switch to the bomb, but it's to the opposite bomb. Oh. So, like, the prisoners could blow up the regular people's bomb, or the regular people could blow up the prisoners' bomb. And if the prisoners would blow up the regular people's bomb, theirs would be disarmed, and vice versa. Make sense?
Gotcha.
And that's Joker's whole plot. And he's like, yeah, because the city is it's so gross, like, watch, they'll kill those prisoners in an instant. But then the city beats him by not doing that. They're like, no, we're not going to do that. That's not what Gotham City is going to be. And then Batman does defeat the Joker. Gotham City does. And in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, and that came out right after 9/11. So there's this big moment about New York, and New York throws a rock at the Goblin. It's kind of cheesy, but I like it. And the guy goes, "You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. New York," because this is big.
So in that case, it's not so much the city as the camaraderie of the citizens in the city. Is that the idea?
Yeah, the camaraderie of the citizens in the city, and them choosing to say that this is what New York is going to be. This is what Gotham is going to be. It's almost the same way that a singular character can make a decision. It's like the whole city as one character is making a decision.
So it affects the plot.
And it affects the plot,
Talking to David about before, like when we write plays together, we were trying to tease out how we were going to put our modules together when we're continuing to work on our class, which is coming to you. It will get there, we promise. But let's talk about setting. Well, but when you do this, it affects the plot. Well, let's talk about plot. Well, plot is so much run by character, and it's just a big circle and a big loop. Those three are so intertwined. So just listen to what David's saying about movies either I've seen and I don't remember, or movies I don't know at all. I can see this in any genre, but for playwriting in particular, especially if you're limited in your set like we are, because it's a high school and this in a gym, you don't have, we don't have the curtain that opens and closes right now. We don't have drops or flies, and we just don't have these things. So we have to find a simple setting, but that doesn't mean that it's ineffective. So it's like, what are the places where the action's going to occur, and how will that affect how we tell our story, which is our plot? And then when you're starting to move the plot along, well, what needs to happen now? Well, that's very driven by what the characters are like. It's just nice to see the interaction. You can find that in, like I said, anything that you're writing that has a story. But I think it's particularly movies and plays, because you have to think of it in so much more of a visual, like what you can actually bring to life. So one of the things David doesn't like is CGI. And, when you have...
Typically speaking.
Yeah, well, too much of it. You don't like when it's
I don't
overdone.
like overuse of CGI.
But that has opened up a whole world in the filmmaking industry now, because you don't have to go build sets anymore. You can create a fantasy setting that would never exist or has never existed, whatever you want it to be, because of that opportunity. And then on stage, I don't know, I haven't been to a lot of Broadway shows lately, which of course is to my chagrin. I love Broadway, but they're experimenting with holograms and CGI
I've seen
stuff.
that. And that's really impressive.
So that's coming to the actual live stage as well. That's pretty cool.
And it can elevate it. It can elevate the settings and bring them to life. I'm sure that it's a good thing, but it's like too much of a good thing is a bad thing, But it's great to see people pushing the limits of what they can do with it. CGI, I say like, oh, I don't really like it, but I don't like the overuse of it, but it is extraordinary. People pushing what you can do with it and how it affects now. Like, I love video games.
I was about to bring that. See, we read each other's mind again.
I love video games. And how that can, because I love storytelling in video games. I don't think it gets enough credit, but I actually had a college professor who said the next big thing that's going to be a college class is like storytelling in video games, because it's a really interesting medium to, like, you're telling a story, but now someone's living through it. But that's a whole other...
it's a very similar thing, though, because in video games, the setting is extremely important.
Yeah, you're interacting in it.
Yeah.
You're moving around in the setting. Yeah,
right.
Like one of my favorite games of all time is Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2, and the setting's the Wild West, and they use CGI, like these brand new technology to create these most beautiful graphics I've ever seen. It's, if you walk through the snow, there's footprints in the snow. The horse does the same thing. And if you fall in the mud, you get up and there's mud over your clothes. You skin an animal, throw it over your shoulder. There's blood on your... It's extremely dynamic, and it's beyond impressive. I just, as a lover of video games, like, I adore that game for being able to immerse you in this setting of the Wild West, and you feel like a cowboy, and you want to talk like this whenever you're done, boring, and it does that because of the setting, because of this technology that pushes you in there. But at the same time, if this was a movie, what would get you more into it? CGI Wild West or actually filming it in a desert?
Yeah.
Now, then again, spaghetti westerns, they're called spaghetti westerns because they were filmed in Italy. Italy was not the Wild West, but still, it's an actual place you're at.
Right. It's a more authentic set in your mind.
Yeah,
in your way of thinking.
I was talking about Joker, but really, speaking of Joker, Joker's filmed in New York City entirely. Maybe, I'm not sure, maybe they use some sound stages for like the interiors, but there's a lot of the film that takes place outside, and it's very real. And there are set photos from a year ago when they were doing it they filmed it in New York City. They didn't even have to transform New York City to be it. There's a place called the Joker Stairs, which is a big deal. It's this big scene where he's dancing on the stairs. And I actually found I want to go there. So I looked it up, and you can go to the Joker Stairs. And actually right now, some fans of the Joker have one on Google, and they've labeled it a religious monument right now. But it's great because that's what brings the setting to life.
Absolutely.
Fully it's a real place.
So that's so different than something that just is created on a computer from somebody's brain, which is an amazing experience to have.
Yeah.
But you can't physically go there and see it.
Right. And I'm not like an idiot. Like I know that you can't have the movie Avatar, for example, the James Cameron movie. That's not real. So you have that. Right. I know. But I'm saying if you're filming a movie about New York City,
put it in New York City.
Why not go to New York City and just film it there? I get that maybe it's expensive, you have to pay for close off streets and roads, but is that really more expensive than buying extremely expensive CGI?
And the amount of hours
it takes to do that? I mean, Spider-Man, I think Spider-Man Far From Home, I think they actually did film it overseas in Europe. But it doesn't matter because they filmed it overseas in Europe where it takes place.
In an actual place.
But they filmed it overseas in Europe in a soundstage in Europe. It's like, come on, man. That's so... Because I hear oh my God, that's so cool. What can we see? You're filming in Europe. Take advantage of that. As a filmmaker, why do you not see that and be like, oh man, let's use this. I mean, if I was putting on a play in Italy and my stage was right in front of the Eiffel Tower, let me tell you, my play is going to feature the Eiffel Tower, so that way I can look and be like, there's the Eiffel Tower.
Did you say Italy?
I meant Paris. I was thinking of Italy for spaghetti westerns on the mind.
I'm curious.
Paris, France. Paris. I know the Eiffel Tower is in Paris.
No, I know you do. I just had to say that for our listeners because I'm sure somebody out there will go, okay. Somebody doesn't know his geography.
Yeah, thank you for catching that. But talk to us a little bit about creating settings for plays that you've done. And
plays
I know that we've talked about it before. A lot of times you come up with the setting first.
For the situations that I work in, because when I was at the first school where I did theater, my school didn't have a stage at all. So we had to build a set at another school down the road. And so most of my plays had a set that didn't change. And maybe if we closed the curtain, because that theater did have a curtain that closed, we could do a few little short scenes in front of that. But I had to think about, are we on an island, which Bermuda Triangle Getaway is? Are we in a house? That's Scandal at Hampton Estate. One of them is a backstage area of a theater. And let's see, what's the other one? The other one is in the lobby of a haunted bed and breakfast in New Orleans area. So you just have to figure out, can the story work around that? And once you get your setting and you have an idea for it, as you write the story, the setting might have to change. Like you might have to add a new entrance to go into this room that becomes part of the plot. But then the plot, as you're writing the story, it's like, well, what should I do next? Well, it's not what you're doing next. It's what are the characters doing next. And it really is a really interesting connection to see how one really does drive the other. I've said the word really as many times as I've said absolutely there. So please excuse my repetition there. But I do enjoy the interconnection of those three because you can start with any of them. But for me, playwriting starts with the setting, and then like we're working, I can't get my words out, we're working right now on Romeo and Juliet update called River and Juliana. So when we decided to do a Shakespeare play and update it, I'm an English teacher. This is now my 31st year as a teacher, and I taught Romeo and Juliet at least 15 years of those, I think. So I really know that play. And I've done my own kind of take on scenes from Romeo and Juliet, but never the whole play. So it's kind of fun to think, okay, they updated it to the 50s in West Side Story, so what can we do? You know, they have all these updated versions all over the place. Let's do it. Let's be hippies. So we have Romeo as a hippie. He's River, dating a socialite named Juliana. And so that really, you start kind of putting yourself there, like they were protesting the war, you know, what hippies stood for in general, and then fighting against the man and all these kind of things that were going on. So that becomes part of the plot, and then you have to create the characters, and then it's like, okay, so other than Romeo and Juliet character, there's the Mercutio character, the jokester, there's the Benvolio character, the storyteller, the great summarizer, I've always called him. So we have just people who fit the Shakespeare roles, but with the twist, it's like, well, what do they do? What makes them unique?
And then you have to look at the setting to decide. Well, what could happen here? What could happen here? What could that person be?
Right.
That's a great example of you just move the setting. You move the setting of this story, becomes a completely different thing.
Right, because setting so much back. We think of as physical, but it is also time. Yeah. So yeah, you're right.
And you know, if you really want to elevate your story to being something great, take a look at the setting and make sure that is just as interesting as the characters. I think a fault that I see in a lot of stuff, a lot of movies, film, books, games, TV, plays, is I'm like, this story is really great, but like, this is so a lot. It can be boring to watch if the setting is a building or something with no personality, but then again, you know, you can take something like that and give it personality. But if you, I think a fatal mistake of a lot of creators is to not take the setting seriously enough and think, okay, I'll just set it, it's in this, and then they don't do anything with that. You know, if we did Camp Dinky Springs, and if we wouldn't have made it, okay, well, they're sitting around a campfire every night, and also in this setting there's the legend of the Green Menace and these sort of things, that it's boring. We've done nothing with it. It's like having a hammer and not using it to hammer in the nail and using your fist instead. Like, you have this tool, use that. And like if you really want to elevate your story, take a look at the setting and see what you can do with that to push it up to something even greater, like what you're doing with River and Juliana of, well, what are we going to make this? Well, let's look at the time period that we're in, and what can we do with that? How can we incorporate that? You know, that's what the 90's Leonardo DiCaprio movie did with Romeo and Juliet, which is a guilty pleasure of mine.
I have to say, I never liked it.
I know that movie's god awful, but I love it. I love how cheesy.
You can say that about many things. For me,
I can.
What threw me off really, in a huge way, was holding a gun and calling it a sword.
I was about to say. I was about to bring that up.
No.
That's my favorite part. He pulls it out and it says sword, and it's like, what? Because they want to keep the lines. So it's like, well, what the heck is this? It's so stupid.
And watching Romeo and Juliet kill themselves with guns, I'm like, no.
That's so hardcore, though, Donna.
Yeah,
that's so edgy. In 90's. The 90's is an interesting setting.
Not my thing at all.
90's was a weird time. It was a very weird time for a lot of things that I'm a fan of. I'm a big fan of comic books. In the 90's, comic books went all extreme, you know? It's not the X-Men anymore. It's the extreme X-Men and the extreme Avengers, and everybody has big capes, and there's Spawn. He's a hell Spawn, and he kills people. And he has
a big cape.
He has a big cape, and it's so cool. And this guy's wearing gauntlets now, and they're sharp.
Thorns coming out of his elbow.
Pockets was a big one. Everyone had big pockets full of ammo. It's like, he doesn't use guns, but they just have pockets. And there's a new Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, and he's extreme. And he's not your mama's Green Lantern, no siree. He's extreme.
He's greener green than you've ever seen.
Greener green than you've ever seen. And he has a bowl cut. And he's not going to make these silly constructs. He's going to punch you hard because he's extreme. And we're going to kill Superman.
Oh my goodness.
And shoot comic book sales up to the highest grossing comic of all time. Because he murdered Superman with a random monster.
Oh wow.
And so then there's a new Superman, and he's hip and cool and young, and he's the Vindicator, and he wears a leather jacket. And he kills people.
This is all in the 90's.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes, that's all like in the late 90's.
My goodness.
That's when like They did the same thing with Batman, where like Batman had his back broken, so like they had a new Batman, and he wore like this battle armor and had a giant cape and spikes, and he like started choking people to death. And Robin's like, "What are you doing, Batman? Oh my god!" And Robin's wearing his little tights, and he's like, "I'm Batman," and they start cussing and like, "I'm the mother effing Batman." But, oh my god, stop it, Batman. Spider-Man is
the dark Spider-Man.
Dark Spider-Man wears his dark suit, and his wife is dying, and he's like, I'm Spider-Man, I'm so sad, I'm gonna punch people now. And everything's so dark, and oh no, there's clones, and it's, what is happening, dude? Oh my god.
Oh man, you just
comic books
very much came alive on that one, David.
I'm like, the 90s were a weird freaking time, because the setting of the 90s, you said something in the 90s, that's when the Blade movie came out, and it's like, yeah, he's Blade, that's right. It's like, the fact that a Blade movie was made before a Spider-Man movie is just because the 90s existed, and they're like, yeah, so he's Blade, and he's not your mama's superhero, he stabs people, and there's blood, and oh yeah. Jesus Christ.
So just out of curiosity, who is your mother's superhero? You've said that a few times.
Like Superman. And he's truth, justice, and the American way. Yeah, exactly. Like that's just a term I've heard before, where it's like, oh yeah, like the old, like, you know, it's not good old fashioned values anymore. It's extreme.
Yeah,
it's cool.
I get you. So
and your mom's gonna go,
yeah, right.
Yeah, then everything came back because they realized it was stupid.
Well, I don't know if it was stupid. It was just one of those pendulum swings. So
You're right.
What is the opposite of the extreme pendulum swing? Does it go back to everybody being mild-mannered?
It goes back to everybody stop being insane.
Yeah,
I guess. You know, the 90s went through a weird period like that in a lot of fiction and movies and comic books. I have no idea how I can even say it happened. It just sort of did. Everyone felt like they had to go bigger is better and more extreme.
Well, that's
and more
funny
extreme.
because I think of that in the 80s as well, because especially with the clothes. Like when we have 80s dress-up days, and this is just a little bit of a throwback, but when I was in high school in the 80s, we had 50s Day. And I remember thinking, you know, one day they're going to have 80s Day. For some reason, we never had 60s Day and 70s Day. It occurred to me, like, I'm here in the 80s dressing up like people did in the 50s. I never thought about that. But I did have that thought when I was in high school. So as a teacher, when we do have dress-up days and 80s is an option, the kids are asking me, well, how do you do your hair? I said, well, it was just really big. You know, you fluffed it out as high and as wide as you could get it. Well, what about clothes? I said, well, they were big. You had, like, big shoulder pads and the legs and they were big. What about sunglasses? Well, they were big. And they were like, well, everything was just big. I'm like, yes. Like makeup, big, just bright colors.
Bright, yeah.
So big beads, big everything. So when you're talking about the 90s extreme, I think the 80s kind of slid into that.
Yeah, it sounds like the 90s was like the tipping point of all that, where it got even more and more. And we're finally near the end of it. It was like, okay.
Enough is enough.
It sounds like, because it probably all started, you know, it all goes back to like World War II or whatever. You know, everyone comes back and, you know, like when I think about like when you think about stuff like that, like the far past, I just imagine everything like darker colors, and then as you get closer to the modern age, it's brighter and bigger, and it's kids reacting to these things, and like, and you know, there were the new generation, and they didn't want to be like their parents. So like, well, we gotta be bigger and better and extreme, and then and bright, and started probably in the 70s.
Well, I feel like what you're saying, though, is kind of a cycle. And I can pull it all the way back to 80 years ago, which is, interestingly enough, when they made the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And the only reason I bring that up is because now that I'm teaching a law studies elective, and not English for the first time in my career ever, I've tried to find some movies that would work. And I've heard of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington all my life, but I had never seen it. So when I realized that it is actually 80 years old this year,
wow,
and we watched it, and it is amazing to think about people in the 30s depicting the government like they did. I mean, in this movie, there is Mr. Taylor, the big businessman, making sure that the right people get in government so that they're making the right decisions for his big business to make money.
Oh, wow.
And you watch this movie and go, wow, when I think about that, like you said, that was the 30s. People knew idealism and people were all, good and cared about the country. But nope, they had big business and they were money under the table. And
people were making Joker films back then, too. These deconstructions of society.
Right. It's just so interesting how we have that perception. But, human beings are human beings.
Yeah. And there's nostalgia. You look back and you go, oh man, wish everything was, like you hear like
good old days.
Good old days.
Yeah.
And, Bob Sager. I love Bob Sager, but all of his songs are about, man, the good old days were so good. Probably weren't. Anybody who's like, I want to go back to the good old days, probably not as good as you remember. But it's nostalgia, and that's with every generation. You think, oh man, if I could just go back to the 1920s, like, there were like the worst war in history happened then, so it's like, it's really not all that great. And that's something I learned about in English in my freshman year. I remember this whole thing about, like, we had a whole section. I was really impressed with it, actually. This is a really thoughtful thing for a school to do. It's like, let's look back and understand that nostalgia, rose-colored glasses, can really mess with you, and everybody goes through that. And what that makes me think of is that every setting, no matter what it's going to be, especially time periods, there's going to be through lines, things that are the same no matter what. You go back and I love movies like that where you go back, like, I don't know, 1,000 years in the past, and the kind of story that is told is the same one that could be told now. It's why Romeo and Juliet can be updated.
Yes.
Because there are these through lines that no matter where you set it, there are these things that are always going to be the same in a way.
Human nature. A good story is a good story.
A good story is a good story, no matter where you set it. And the setting, a lot of times, can be the thing that is different from... It's like the difference between Romeo and Juliet starring... I don't remember what the exact name of the movie is called. I think it's just Romeo and Juliet. Starring Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, it's Romeo plus Juliet.
Oh, Romeo plus. Oh, plus. Because it's a plus. We're not saying and. We're using plus. Because it's the 90s. And the play Romeo and Juliet is the setting. That's the one change. But everything else is stuck through, but it's a completely different thing, and you get completely different feelings and reactions from it.
Well, but Shakespeare was just a master at human nature, so
yeah,
all
exactly.
of his plays can be updated because you have.
And that's why I appreciate Shakespeare, even though I'm not a fan of a lot of the stuff I've read.
Class, you like
I like Othello a lot. Yeah, I did. That's true. After having your class, what was the other one? The one with Caliban. Is that his name?
That was, oh my goodness, you're throwing me off guard now. We were going to go see it live, and now I can't remember the name. The Tempest.
The Tempest, yes. I actually really like those. So you're right. I do enjoy it. And it's all about human nature. And
it is.
It's like, Grey's Anatomy is the modern day Shakespeare, I say. This is the first time I've ever said it and had that thought. But, I always say, because it's like this... It's very like this. It's drama. It's just human nature, and you can take these stories like that, these stories about human nature, and set them at any point, and it works at any setting. But you change the setting, you can make it different and more interesting. In a way.
Pulling one string in the tapestry.
Pulling the string, makes it completely different. It's like when you take a banana and you change like 50% of the DNA, it becomes a human or something. I don't know. I read that in a book one time, I think.
See.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a thought, and I have to let it ruminate in my brain, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. I might have to look it up and fix my mistake in the notes, but there's a story called Dr. Heidegger's Experiment, where there are these older people who are given the chance to be young again. And before they get this opportunity, they talk about all the mistakes they made and how they would be different, and they would never do this again, and so on. So when they are able to drink the potion or whatever makes them younger again, it's been a really long time since I read it. The woman who said she would never be vain was vain again. The man who said he'd never be jealous was jealous again. And all the things that they said they would do differently, once they get back to the age they were, they're exactly like they were. And I think that's just so interesting.
That's really cool.
Because that's an idea kind of messing with setting. Like all these movies where you get to go back and relive or go back and watch. And I love movies that play with the timeline. That's one of the reasons I adore Star Trek, because they do so much. In fact, I watched an episode today. I came home and turned on Star Trek because I knew I was tired and I wanted to kind of kick back and relax. And what they had was an episode where Riker wakes up and 16 years have passed and he doesn't remember any of them. And so he's thinking about, like, how could I have lost 16 years of my memory? And they explain it away with some kind of virus that he caught that caused him to lose his memory. And they've done so many episodes where people will just jump back or jump forward, or ones where like they go through pockets of time and suddenly they're going really fast or going really slow, and just playing with how time messes with your head, or how it can change, like what aspect, if you go back in time, the human nature will all be the same, but you might not have the same conveniences, or you might not wear the same style clothes. And I just love time travel stuff. It has always fascinated me.
Me too. And I think that can be really cool when used in a story, because then you can have like different settings of time. Not only are you changing, because you have different settings where like you go from place to place, and I think that's also really cool. Is going like in movies or in anything you do, you really want to just keep a way to keep up the excitement is to go to new place. But at the same time, you can take a thing where it's like Saw, the way Saw was made was film students wanted to make a movie in one room.
Oh, okay.
So that's where the idea for Saw came from. What was I just talking about? Time travel. About how if you're setting it like in kind of one place, time travel can be used to change the setting, because like we were saying, time is a part of the setting. Time really influences what you're doing.
They did a masterful job with Back to the Future, because they have the same clock tower, and it's vital to all three movies, and then the way it's used and the way they show that they know the lightning's going to strike. And
exactly what I was like.
Love that.
Great example. That's what I was trying to get at of like, even though it's a clock tower, it's three different settings technically, but they all play out differently.
And one affects the other, because in the first one, it's that they find out when the lightning struck that tower, so that they can use it to get back. It's just so amazing.
Gigawatts. I forget the exact number.
Maybe gigawatts.
Is it gigawatts?
Something like
I always said it. I don't know. Can you think of a story where the setting wasn't important?
Well, I liked what you said about kind of the challenge. Like, you need to make a movie in one room. So that became important, because how else would you make that movie, right? So, but that was minor to the storyline from what I've heard. I don't like Saw movies. But
I'm not a huge fan. It did become minor, but it's kind of like how when we made Dinky Springs, it's like, well, okay, we have to do it in a camp. Because we don't have a big stage. Because what there was, we have to do it in one room because we don't have money to pay for anywhere else. We can rent this room. Yeah. So it was necessity. And I always hear, I think it's necessity drives creativity. I've heard
You're right.
Before.
You are correct.
By your limits. But can you think of anything like that?
No, I think it always affects. It just might not have as big of an effect. But I will say, just to throw in, because this was the thought I wanted to come back to. So in our plays that we've been writing for us, we found a way to make, and I mentioned this I think in an earlier podcast, something from Greek theater called periaktoi. And they're triangular shaped pieces that rotate. So you have a piece, one flat surface turned to have one backdrop, and then you turn it to another face and there's another backdrop. So now when I'm writing my plays, we have three options for backdrops, and you can just put simple set pieces in front to create whatever scene. And you can use the same backdrop, let's just say a fancier interior for a house, but also a restaurant and so on. And what just happened by accident this year, we wrote the first play, which is about the vampire, the one we're working on now. And there's an outside set, kind of like a wooded area type set. There's a fancy interior set, and then there's a school hall set. And when we wrote Romeo and Juliet, our updated version, we used the same exact three backdrops. It just happened to work out that way because we need a fancier home, but we also need some scenes set in school. So that'll be very cool for our tech to paint it once and not have to do it again. That will be very nice.
That'll be nice.
The pieces in front will have to change, but again, if we didn't have the option of the three backgrounds, that would completely change the story, because it would be like, how do I write a play about this vampire who meets this kid in a graveyard, and then he and his group of monsters who are irrelevant in society now meet in the forest, but then there's a scene at the end where there's this big dance and it has to be at this hall. We could not do that if we didn't have the option that we have of the three different backdrops. We would have to either just not write the story that way, or figure out a way to make our backdrops work some kind of different way than what we have. But the stories that I'm writing for this year's plays would not be what they were without those options. And so I think it's nice that we found a way to not have to just have one setting. And I will also say to you, because I don't know if I ever told you this, people have criticized the Camp Dinky Springs play we wrote because it had so many people on stage all the time, and it was a camp. So there were 16 campers, and they were almost always on stage, either sitting around the campfire or standing around TV trays doing some kind of craft project or whatever. And when you have a lot of people on stage, to help the audience understand who's speaking, you have to either have the person stand up, which we had to do, or move forward, or just make really dramatic arm motions. And I think that was difficult. When my earliest plays, the ones that are already published, generally had a whole bunch of people on stage. But when we wrote Pelican, it was more of a kind of TV show type thing. And again, that was the first time we had our 3 different backdrops. So we could have scenes where like 2 or 3 people talked and then went off. And then another group came on and talked and went off, but only because the set was able to change. So it helped the flow, which is what I keep talking about. The story was greatly affected by the set when we changed to having 3 instead of just 1, because now we don't have to have all these people on this one place the whole time to tell the story. If we had had 3 set options for Camp Dinky Springs, we could have shown people talking in their cabins, or maybe had a set by the pond and actually shown the challenges, and which would have been a completely different story. So,
It would have been. I was just thinking the same thing of like, if we had those trying, I don't know what they're called.
They're called periactoi. Periactoi.
Periactoi.
There you go.
I'm gonna call them Perrys. If we had
you
the
can call
Perrys,
them triangular. You can just call them
set thingies, the triangles, set drop back thingies, drop back thingies. If we would have had those, then yeah, we would have wrote a completely different play. Probably
it would have been very different.
It probably wouldn't be Camp Dinky Springs.
That's a good point.
Because we would have come up with a completely different idea.
Yeah, because my whole premise was name a set.
Yeah, name a set.
People threw out ideas at me, and I was like, park. In a park. Oh, camp. Let's do a camp. And the whole idea was born.
Exactly. And that's why I think you can pick anything to start with to create something. You can start with a character, or you can start with a plot idea, or you can start with a setting, or any even seemingly minor piece of the puzzle.
Oh, that's something I love to talk about.
You can start
Have you ever watched a movie and at the end of it you're like, that whole movie was written because of that one little piece. You know what I'm saying? I wish I could think of an idea right now, but I'll watch a movie and I'll watch it all the way through to the end and I'll think, they got that idea because they wanted that character to have that line at the sunset.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like you could almost see the spark of inspiration. That's
Pulp Fiction. The final scene of the movie Pulp Fiction is the scene where they're in the diner. Pulp Fiction is not shown in chronological order, and the reason it's not is because Quentin Tarantino wanted that scene, that one piece of the puzzle, to be the final thing, and he says the line at this moment in the movie, and it closes the film and credits roll. And so because of that, he shot the movie an entirely different way and completely rearranged the story just to get that one nugget right there at that specific spot,
and made a masterpiece.
That's creation, is taking these nuggets and putting them in the order that makes it fit perfectly. It's like math. It's taking the pieces of the puzzle and putting it together in a certain way, and you can start with whatever piece you want. And it's sort of like when you're solving an equation, you can solve whichever part of it, ever side you want to solve first. You'll get the same answer. And
well, I remember J.K. Rowling talking about when she wrote Harry Potter. As I've said, I've read a decent amount about that, and the story fell into her brain, but she had the image of Hagrid walking out carrying dead Harry, who was not really dead, at that big, huge, final, momentous scene, and she just could see that part, Hagrid walking out with Harry, and she had that image. And everything that she did, writing the stories that she wrote, had to build up to that because that was just so vital in her mind. Yeah. It had to be in there. And I love hearing people talk about that because you could be driving down the road and see just a person and the way they're standing or the way they're talking to another person. It's like, it just the spark, and it could just lead to the entire story as long as you get that piece in.
That's why in our 25 tips to staying creative in life, one of one of our tips, one of the first ones I thought of, was to keep a notepad with you wherever you go, which now we have our phone, so we have a constant notepad.
Yes, you do.
But I found that having like a physical notepad, not CGI, but it's physical.
You can hold it in your hand.
You can hold it in your hand.
You
really,
can hold your phone in your hand, David.
Shut up. So you can really do that.
Am I right?
You're right. But you can do that, and that's one of our 25 tips. So if you want the other 24 tips just like that, then definitely click the link in the description to go to our website. That's where you'll find that. It's very simple. You go to there, right at the top, it's going to say you want your 25 tips. You go from there.
Right. And we need to add to our blog. We talk about that, but we're both busy so much with our school situation that hasn't quite been a thing that we focused on. But we will not let the podcast drop. In fact, the weekend that I had with the haunted house, so just context here, we had Friday off. And in my school system, we have Friday off for our parish fair. So all my teacher friends were talking about their long 3-day weekend and their plans. And my plans included staying after school Thursday and then being up at school pretty much the entire weekend until I was about to drop dead yesterday. And normally Sunday is when we record. So today's actually Monday that we're recording because I think David made something up yesterday. Because I told him that I can do it. Just come over. We'll record a podcast. And he's like, yeah, well, something came up. I'll just come tomorrow. So I think you were taking care of me there. Is that what happened?
Mostly, yeah. I kept saying, like, I know you're
tired.
exhausted. I know that you've got to be, were you exhausted?
I was tired, but I could have done a podcast.
All week. I know you could have, but actually something did come up.
Okay, so it was...
it was hanging out with my friends, but something did come up.
But you still managed to come today. So the point is, as I've said many times about this business...
Rearrange my work schedule to come today.
Yeah, so. I appreciated that very much. You can start something and let it drop and then go, man, I wish I hadn't done that. Or you can start something and make it work. And David and I have decided that's what we're going to do. We'll make it work.
Every week you do what you can. Which some weeks is...
Not much.
Not much, but...
We will get the podcast every week. We will do that.
We have made a goal that we will 100% stick to, that we have not faltered on in the slightest. It's like every week there will be a podcast uploaded on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And we have bonus podcasts, which you can also check out on our website, davidanddonnacreative.com. Link is in the description. We've done some amazing podcasts recently. I've really enjoyed it. Our Fake Rate one, I'm probably the most proud of it. I got a lot of views and it was really important. I've been talking like a what's the word for it? A guy who pitches things. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, guys, it's a really great podcast. Check it out. If you're a book lover, you should go to fakerate.com. It is the perfect place for book lovers to go. You get a free subscription. No, you don't. You don't get it. It's not free. It's not free.
Nothing is free.
No, but so check out our podcast if you want to know more about Fake Rate. Blah blah blah. You just like spit it out like that. Yeah. But people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, sorry, I'm just in the mindset.
Well, I will say this, too. One of the things that I enjoyed so much about having both of them here is listen to Swearingen talking about his book. And that's another phenomenal example of setting. Because he talked about how when he grew up, he had this kind of forest area in the back that he wasn't allowed to go in. And that grew in his mind until now he has Tales of the Bordenwood. And so he wrote an entire novel and 3 more to come about just that setting.
Yeah, it's amazing. He was like, what's back there?
Yeah, so his mind created it.
That's really cool.
So I guess we need to find a way to end it.
I
think we're done.
I'm 19. It's a little early.
Yeah, you don't want to die. That is not what I meant. You know what I mean. We gotta.
Oh, the podcast.
Right. You're so silly, goofy boy.
I'm a goofy. I'm just a big old goof. I was thinking real quick, and this is completely irrelevant, but I've been trying to find a way to tell you, but it never comes up in conversation. But now I said the word goofy. I was thinking if we had a talent show whenever I was in theater, because now they have a yearly talent show.
Didn't have a variety show.
Variety show, but it's what would you do? Variety show is a chance to be it's like a talent show in a way where it's like,
but
what can you do?
There's just no judge.
There's no judge. Right. Yeah, I don't mean, but it's a place where you can go up there and do what you do. You I have no idea what I would have done, but yes, I do. I would have sung songs in the goofy voice from Mickey Mouse.
I think you should do that before we leave. So let's hear it.
On the podcast?
Why not?
Name a song.
Oh, God, what's a song you know?
Name one and maybe I know
I don't know. David.
We listen to music all the time that we both know.
I can't think of anything.
Do you remember the 21st night, September, gosh? Love was changing the mind, so tender. Oh, yeah. Said that you remember. Oh, yeah. Dancing in September.
You must stop.
Like that.
That is a perfect song.
Yeah. I was like, oh, we both know that song.
We definitely do.
So I would have done that on stage.
I'm so
in
sorry.
front of an
we missed
audience.
it. So sorry.
I have a Goofy hat from Disney World. It's like a big hat. It's the Goofy hat, with the ears. And
Yeah.
so
that is such a
that
shame.
really is just completely irrelevant. But I've had that thought in my head for
I'm
months.
so glad you were able to get that
and
out
I
right now.
kept forgetting to tell you. Yeah, you were laughing.
I was absolutely
So the
laughing.
whole crowd would have been too.
Absolutely. All right, so I think we need to wrap it up. So I guess
Yeah.
we need to say thank you so much for listening. I'm Donna.
And I'm David.
Stay creative.